Welcome to Link by Golf. I'm your host Ross McGuire and I'd like to start by thanking Lomond Golf Tours for their continued support of the show. In this episode I'm joined by Mike Carroll, the man behind Fit for Golf and one of the leading voices in golf fitness today. Mike has built a reputation for helping golfers of all levels unlock better performance through smarter, more effective training, blending strength, speed and mobility in ways that truly impact the game. We're going to dive into the journey behind Fit for Golf, the evolution of golf fitness and the practical advice Mike has for anyone serious about improving their body and their game. So settle in and get ready for a conversation full of insight, experience and plenty of actionable takeaways. Let's go over to Mike. This week on the podcast, I'm delighted to be joined by Mike Carroll. Mike, great to see you. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure, Ross. Thank you very much for asking me, and I'm looking forward to chatting.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, Mike, we'll jump straight in. So you've worked with some of the top players, I was going to say in the PGA Tour, but in tours right around the world. How has fitness evolved as a key component of their game, in your mind?
I think as golf has gotten more professional with higher stakes and a far bigger pool of people trying to make it as a professional golfer, it's become far less likely for players to be able to make it without exhausting all avenues of potential improvement. And fitness is definitely one of those. And it's certainly going that way more even now with kind of say the next batch of players that are starting to come on tour or, will be on tour in 5 or 10 years. And even so with the players who are there at the moment, trying to either go up in the rankings or keep their card. Like there's no doubt that maybe even still now, but definitely in generations gone past, you could be a world-class golfer with zero attention to fitness. Like there's a bunch of players.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally.
There's a bunch of players in the Hall of Fame. There's lots of major winners who were in no means in good physical condition and didn't, do any type of exercise other than playing golf and, the walking and swinging that comes with it.
Yeah.
And there's still probably going to be some players who are just so skilled that they can get away with that. But I think it's going to be less and less and less, just because it's now so competitive that it's unlikely that if you're, missing out on this, reasonably important aspect, that you're going to be better than the huge pool of players who are also trying to make it to the top that are going down all these different avenues. And there's no doubt about it. It's one of those things where just because we've had exceptional players who have won majors and been world number one or whatever without going down the fitness avenue, that's not proof that it's not valuable for your game, or it's not proof that it's a good idea, whether it be for performance kind of in the short and medium term, or injury prevention and longevity in terms of your earning potential and how long you can stay on tour.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, Mike, we'll jump in a little bit more as well. What does a typical training session look like for an elite golfer? And then what do you do to make sure it's specific to their own game and their own physicality as well?
Yeah, so the sessions are usually very simple from my point of view, but sometimes I kind of forget that because I'm very used to designing these and running through them, that me saying they're pretty straightforward doesn't actually mean anything for the person who doesn't have a background in training. So there's generally 3 parts to the training session. Number 1 is a dynamic warm-up, which is essentially a series of bodyweight exercises. And the goal of these are, the clue is in the name, to get the golfer warmed up from, maybe the travel time they've just had to, get to the golf course. It could be early in the morning. But generally just a series of bodyweight exercises to get their temperature up, their heart rate up, and essentially loosen out some of the key joints in the body. Things like the ankles, knees, hips, their back, shoulders, neck, all the things we want to be nice and warm and loosened out, whether we're going to be working out or swinging a golf club. And that takes about 10 minutes. And then they go into a section of the workout that is designed to work on explosive power, or a kind of fancier term for it is rate of force development. And basically this is to try and improve the golfer's ability to produce force quickly. Like if you watch sports or listen to commentary, you'll hear commentators say that guy or girl is very explosive. They can produce a lot of power quickly. Yeah. I think we all know that when we see it. And it's a little bit different to just maximum strength or the ability to move something that's very heavy, which is also good.
Of course.
But because the golf swing is a very short duration, like 1 second activity, where we're using a very light implement, a golf club, and in the long game, and especially at the higher levels, we're trying to make it move very quickly. This ability to produce force fast is important. And we can enhance our capabilities to do that in training by working on actually muscle groups all throughout the body, because in the golf swing, even though we're holding the club in our hands, we actually use our whole body to generate force and then eventually get it out into the club. So what this will look like is I'll have golfers do generally some sort of jump training to work on this explosive type power in their lower body. It could be something as simple as literally putting their hands on their hips, squatting down, jumping up as high as they can for 5 or 6 reps in a set. And obviously the intent to jump as high as you can, you kind of naturally are working on producing as much force as possible, because if we want to jump higher, we have to push down into the ground harder with our leg muscles. Yeah. And then we'll do something similar for kind of the midsection and the upper body. And I generally do that with things like medicine ball throwing and slamming. So if you have a wall available, it can be something as simple as standing kind of side onto a wall, almost as if you were going to swing or hit a golf ball down the range, except you have the ball in your hands and you're side on throwing the ball off the wall as hard as you can.
Right.
You might have it overhead and pulling it down into the ground as hard as you can. And if med balls aren't available, we might do similar movements with kind of light elastic bands. Yeah. So that they can get this fast movement. That generally takes about 10 minutes as well. Okay. It would be usually about kind of 3 sets of 5 to 6 reps on each exercise, or 5 to 10 reps, depending on the exercise. And then the third section of the workout will be run-of-the-mill generic strength training. This is important for increasing and maintaining muscle mass and increasing muscle strength. And this would be something as simple as things like squatting, deadlifting, bench pressing, pull-ups, dumbbell rows, and things like this. And that just because the nature of these exercises, because the sets are a little bit more fatiguing. Like if we do, say, a set of, let's say, 5 vertical jumps versus 5, let's say, heavy challenging squats, we need a slightly longer recovery time after the set of 5 heavy squats than we do the set of 5 challenging vertical jumps. So the sets and reps for the strength exercises will actually be quite similar to the jumping or the throwing, but it will take longer because there's a little bit more recovery time needed between the sets. Right. Like if you do a set of, heavy bench presses, you need a little bit of a bigger breather than if you do like a medicine ball chest pass off the wall. Yeah. And kind of why those two things are important, like without getting super complex into sort of the physiology of training, but the golf swing and producing speed in the golf swing is what I would call a power activity. And what I mean by that is, if we think of it on a continuum or a spectrum from maximum speed, the fastest we can possibly move, to maximum strength, the heaviest or the highest force we can possibly move, something like for the lower body, like sprinting, or for the upper body, like swinging a like badminton racket, would be kind of on the maximum speed side of the spectrum. Yeah. And like moving something exceptionally heavy that you can barely move would be the maximum strength side. And the easiest way to think of that is something like powerlifting, where you're squatting or bench pressing or deadlifting for 1 repetition as heavy as you can, or trying to move, a car that you can barely move, but you're pushing as hard as you can. That would be the maximum strength side of the spectrum. Golf is kind of in the middle. And to improve this middle area, the kind of best way to do that is actually train on both sides of the spectrum, because adaptations that we can make to our body are primarily either strength adaptations or speed adaptations. And if we can drive up both of those, the section in the middle, which is what we're doing when we're swinging the golf club, is naturally enhanced. And just by practicing our swing with our improved physical capabilities from training, that's kind of where the gains are made.
Fantastic. And you talk about the swing there, Mike. How did golf start for you? How did you get into the game?
There was a pitch and putt club about a 15 or 20-minute walk from my house where I grew up in Cork, Ireland. And I think I started playing there with friends when I was about 10 or 11, maybe 11 roughly. And I kind of have some memories of as soon as I was old enough, sort of in the summers and on the weekends, like walking up there, and spending hours there going around the pitch and putt club. And, then you start playing in some of the sort of Saturday and Sunday competitions with the members and things like that.
Yeah.
And one of my friends there, his dad was a member of a golf course, and he saw that we had some interest in the pitch and putt. So he said, have you ever tried golf? Would you like to come out? And we went and played golf, and I loved that, just the bigger course, the far bigger variety in shots and things like that. And then I think it was for my 12th or 13th birthday, I got like a half set of golf clubs and kind of a membership to the local public course. And kind of like a lot of youngsters then, from about 12 to 16 or 17, a lot of, time in the summers and time on the weekends down at the golf course. But golf was kind of one of many sports for me growing up. And to be honest, was probably never the one that I was best at.
Okay.
And then I actually kind of quit golf. Well, I did quit golf for about 5 years at the end of secondary school through college, sort of due to frustration from not getting as good as I would like to, as quickly as I would like to. And then took it back up after college. So I had about a 5 or 6 year kind of spell from roughly age 17 to 22 or so, where I didn't play at all. And I'm 33 now, so kind of back playing 10 years.
Yeah. And then what took you into golf fitness? I know that you studied sports and exercise at university, but what took you to the golf fitness specifically?
Just the interest I had in golf from when I played it, and from, kind of following the professional game. I loved watching it on TV when I was playing golf as a teenager. And once I started studying the sports and exercise science, we were learning about physiology and biomechanics, and I was thinking, this is so relevant to golf, it would be really, really interesting. And even before I went to college, I can remember when I was playing golf, just as a kind of junior amateur, I actually started going to the gym.
Right.
And I saw just a massive difference in like how far the golf ball was going, basically. And I was like, man, this is crazy. I was like, nobody's talking about this, because that was before like TrackMans were like, I had no idea what like club head speed or ball speed was.
You just knew you're hitting it further, right?
I just knew I was hitting it further, from just where the ball was going, kind of on the golf holes you're used to playing.
Yeah.
And relative to the players you're used to playing with. And that was before like TrackMan was common in the amateur or pro game. And then, once I started studying and thinking about work and things like that, one of the things that most trainers will tell you, like, is that the sort of the fitness trainer / strength and conditioning coach market is very, very saturated. Like, if you want to be a personal trainer with the general public, there's so much competition. It's really, really tough to kind of like charge prices that are high enough to make a living. People tend to do, crazy antisocial hours, and it can be fine in your sort of late teens or early 20s, but then you hit, a ceiling pretty quickly, and it's not really sustainable. And then with strength and conditioning, which is, kind of training athletes for sports, unless you got hired by a professional like sports team, there wasn't really that many good avenues to kind of make a good living either. The wages or the salaries tended to be really poor, to be honest.
Yeah.
And again, like very antisocial hours, because most teams are training at nighttime after work, unless it's a professional team. And then there's always weekend travel. Like, there's a game on a Sunday, you're leaving Saturday at noon. So I was very adamant that I wanted to be like working in the private sector for myself, and golf was a market that I just thought was a real niche, and also something I was just extremely interested in. Like once I kind of got back playing golf, and the sort of club head speed, ball speed metrics and things like that were becoming more common, kind of just my personality, like I love, sort of essentially like looking at problems to solve. So the problem I was trying to solve was the problem of club head speed. Like why are certain golfers slow? Why are certain golfers fast? Both from a physical development and biomechanics standpoint. And like if we introduce an intervention, which is a fancy word for a training program, what happens? And kind of here we are, basically.
I think it's fascinating. I mean, you look at some golfers and you think they're hardly moving, and yet their club head speed and their ball speed so high, and you almost can't fathom it, versus somebody else that looks like they're absolutely jumping at it, and they're maybe 10, 15 miles an hour behind it. I find that fascinating as well.
Yeah, so something that's like important to remember in the golf swing, and it sounds very obvious, but like the only speed that matters is how fast the club head is moving at impact.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have golfers who don't look like they're working very hard, but because they have good physical capabilities and they have like let's say a very efficient sequence or a movement pattern that is essentially moving in, I don't want to use the word sequence again, but they're moving in a way that means that the club head is getting faster and faster as it's coming towards impact. And they're exceptionally good at getting the club head moving really quickly at impact without looking like they've exerted a lot of effort to do it. But they are producing like high forces. They're using their muscles very well. Whereas if we look at lower skilled players that look like they're working very hard but aren't producing a lot of club head speed, like they can actually be producing a higher club head speed earlier in the swing than the faster player, but they're wasting it. Like it's out of sequence, it's out of whack. So that's why it looks like they're doing a lot, but it's not doing a lot. It's not doing a lot at the ball,
Yeah.
Like ideally what we want to have in the golf swing is, you've probably heard of like the ground up sequence, or we want it to work like a kind of chain reaction. So like we want to use our legs pushing into the ground to speed up the rotation of our hips, which we transfer to our torso, which we transfer to our arms, which we transfer to our wrists, which we then transfer to the club. And if we can have that nice sequence, each segment of the body I just mentioned almost piggybacks off the other. Like a good way to think of it is, if you think of like a lot of these listeners are in the UK, I'm sure. So if you think of, let's say, a baseball pitcher, or almost like maybe a cricket bowler or something like that. And if you think of the amount of speed they generate, and you try to isolate doing that just with your, say, shoulder and arm, you don't have a hope. Like it's their shoulder and arm and hand is releasing that ball at a high velocity, but they've generated a huge amount of momentum with other parts of their body, and they're releasing it here. Like a good boxer throwing a punch is similar. They're delivering.
They're not
it with
static,
their hand.
right? They're not kind of standing.
No, they're delivering it with their hand, but that's starting with their legs and then into their trunk and then their upper body. And the golf swing similar. We want to try and piggyback off the big muscles in our legs, trunk, torso, and then eventually release it with our hands. Whereas a lot of less skilled or beginner golfers, they don't do that. Like they don't load up well enough in their backswing, and then at the start of the downswing, it's thrown with the hands and arms early.
Yeah.
And when it's thrown with the hands and arms early, the speed is released, and now they're essentially just trying to drag it through impact. Whereas these players that don't look like they're moving very hard, like the Ernie Els is the classic one. Or,
I was going to say Ernie's the classic, isn't he? The big easy.
Are now the one that everybody's talking about is Jake Knapp.
Like he looks like he's just having a sleep.
Exactly, but that's essentially what's happening. And then usually when you're looking at like the real freaks, and I mean this, and I mean freak in the nicest possible way. They are outliers in terms of not only their mechanics, but also their physical capabilities. Like Jake Knapp is also an exceptionally good athlete. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he's dunking basketballs.
Yeah.
He's squatting and benching
I
huge
think
weights.
Dustin Johnson and Brooks Koepka are quite famous for, aren't they? They're pretty good at basketball and a bunch of other sports, and they've got
Yeah,
that
they're
explosive
huge.
speed.
Like they're big people. Like
They're
like
big units, aye.
Dustin Johnson's arms look like they're hanging down to his knees, you know, and
Yeah,
he's also 6'4". So like
yeah.
if he starts moving well with an arc with that long, you know, it's a little bit unfair for us average size people.
Well, we'll get to that for you, Mike. We'll get to that. But then you touched on the challenges for personal trainers and people doing the strength and conditioning around maybe scaling their business and seeing more customers. How did Fit for Golf come to life? I'm really interested in that.
So Fit for Golf was first developed as a like in-person training training business basically in Cork in Ireland. So
Right.
it was one of the things I was doing on top of training kind of other teams in various sports, some athletes in other sports, and general population. But I started kind of marketing for golfers and just kind of came up with the business name Fit for Golf and started some social media pages and things like that. But about a year or so into that, I actually saw a job listing for a gym in California that was looking for a trainer.
Uh-huh.
And so I was living in Cork, Ireland, where I was born and grew up. I was about 24, so shortly after college had finished. And long story short, applied for the job, was hired for the job, and moved to California in 2016 to work for Hanson Fitness for Golf. And kind of, I guess, naivety in your youth or whatever. I just quickly realized once I got there that the cost of living and my wages did not add up.
It didn't add up.
It didn't add up, which was fine. Like if things didn't work out, I could have just gone back to
Yeah.
the work I had been doing in Cork, which for kind of someone in their early 20s was pretty good, you know. But at about the same time, I found out about online training and kind of thought that this would be a good way to try and supplement my income. So it was as simple as starting to record some videos, put them into training programs, and then sell them via my website.
Okay.
And that's how it started. And over time, that just really kind of took off. I got pretty committed to producing some material online for Instagram, Twitter, my website, and that was in 2017, January 2017. I arrived in California in October of 2016, and then from 2017 to 2020, I basically split my time between working for Mike Hansen of Hansen Fitness for Golf, who had hired me, and doing the Fit for Golf app stuff on the side. And eventually I'd kind of built up a big enough portfolio and things like that where I could apply for a green card on the back of the sort of Fit for Golf business, and then went full. And then actually it was actually sort of, I guess, like I was lucky in one way. COVID hit in 2020, so the gyms were shut down, but I was lucky in a way that I'd been working on the app for the last 3 or 4 years, and it kind of coincided with me being able to go full time with that. Also at a time when kind of people, you know, had more time to exercise at home, golf was sort of shut down, so it was sort of an opportune time for me there, that way, and that's how it came about.
Fantastic. And then, you know, how does the community come together? What kind of activities do you see that are really promoting getting people involved with it as well?
Like, how are people signing up for the app?
Yeah, how are you getting to those people to get them involved with signing up for the app?
Oh, it's been almost entirely just kind of organic online material. So like I'm definitely lucky in that when I started doing this, like I guess sort of smartphones and social media were booming. And what I mean by that is like it was a time when like I guess generations of people who maybe 5 or 10 years earlier like weren't really like in the smartphone space, you know, kind of maybe slightly older people and things like this, you know, we're just like I'm not going to bother learning how to use a smartphone now, you know. But that started to change. I think it got more common for people who were, you know, I don't want to offend anyone, but maybe pushing on a little bit to start using
a bit older than you, Mike. That's all we'll say. We'll just leave it at that.
Exactly. So it basically just meant it got really, really easy to get your material in the hands of a lot of people that previously wouldn't have. So like social media was booming, Twitter and Instagram. I was writing blogs on my website that were getting quite a lot of views, and that was essentially the marketing plan. Was every day put out some educational or promotional material on social media, on my website, and my email list. Was lucky enough to get invited on a lot of podcasts early on, and I think it kind of got to a point where like I got reasonably well known as kind of one of the go-to people in that, you know, very, very niche area.
Yeah, definitely.
Which was good, and that's kind of how it built up basically. So like since 2020, the Fit for Golf app has essentially been like the full-time business really.
I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Lomond Golf Tours for their support. Let's hear from them now.
At Lomond Golf Tours Scotland, we understand that choosing the perfect golf trip can bring its challenges. With more than 500 golf courses in Scotland and another 2,000 around the UK and Ireland, many of our guests don't know where to start. But for Lomond Golf Tours, it's not just about the golf, it's about providing an experience that will exceed expectations, that will turn dreams into realities, and that will create memories that last a lifetime. Lomond Golf Tours have helped thousands of guests build bespoke golf trips to create a magical experience. Travel in style, whether executive chauffeur travel, whether it's golf on a major championship venue or one of our hidden gems, 5-star accommodation or a boutique bed and breakfast, or is it whiskey tasting on a private boat? Lomond Golf Tours are here to help build the tour of a lifetime. Whether you're celebrating a special occasion or ticking it off your bucket list, embark on a trip that you'll remember forever. To learn more about our offerings for 2025 and beyond, visit www.lomondgolftours.com.
Yeah, and I was going to say, for the people who are, you know, listening to the podcast and they're interested in their own golf fitness and their own journey, what are the common misconceptions that might prevent them from getting into looking after their body in a different way and applying that to their golf as well?
Yeah, like I think two of the biggest ones are people think they're too old to make progress. They think, you know, like that's for younger people. Like I'm too old to get into kind of resistance training or to start looking after myself, which definitely isn't the case. Like people can make huge progress in 60s, 70s, 80s, like no doubt about it. It's been shown lots of times. And then the other ones are people thinking they don't have enough equipment or they don't have enough time. Like,
yeah,
fitness is one of those things where like the biggest benefits are going from doing nothing to doing a bit. Like that's where the biggest gains are. Going from doing a bit to doing like a decent amount or a lot is beneficial, but then like it starts dropping off pretty quickly in terms of like, you know, more and more benefit for more and more work, unless you're trying to compete at a high level in some sort of sport, you know. But like that's kind of how I try and tackle people, like, as if you can assign even just a little bit of time daily or every other day, like you can make progress for definite, you know. Basic mobility work, basic resistance training, like things as simple as like doing some squats and push-ups and stretching exercises at home. And getting out for a couple of brisk walks is kind of all you need to do to start making a big impact on your fitness. The key is that you're consistent with it and keep going with it, really. And I kind of joke with people sometimes that I'm tricking them into working on their fitness and health by telling them it's going to improve their golf game, which it will. But sometimes the sell is, kind of, are you sick of your buddies driving it past you? Are you sick of not being able to reach that par 4 in 2 anymore? Like, let's get stronger. And the benefit is there for definite, but then there's also the benefit of, whatever it may be, their back or their knee isn't as sore. They're getting up and down the stairs better. They can look after their grandkids or their kids better. And the other thing that's nice is like, that's kind of one side of it, is the people who are maybe, haven't been exercising as much as maybe they should be, and they'd like to do more, but don't really know what to do or have reservations. They're like accommodated for on the app for definite. But then there's also like the whole way across kind of that scale. There's junior golfers that are trying to get college scholarships using it. There's college golfers who are trying to go pro using it. There's a bunch of tour players using it. You've got, the regular weekend golfer. It's nice, like how, I guess, scalable it has been to target the different demographics. And like from the user side, like without being a sales pitch, like I think it's good on their end that they don't need to worry about, like, let's say the cost or time demands of going to see a good trainer if they can find one in their area. Like, this works out at $3 a week, and they have enough training material to last for as long as they train, basically.
Yeah, and then the other thing, Mike, is, and you've touched on it a bit with talking about speed and power. Everyone is talking about speed and power in the golf game now. What are some of the, I guess, people worry about going and trying to increase their speed, and I've been trying to do a bit of that, not through fitness, I'll definitely point out, but what are some of the, I guess, the misconceptions there as well around getting injured from it? What things can people do to make sure that they prevent that sort of outcome when they're trying to gain speed?
So, like with any type of physical training, the biggest mistake that people make is too much too soon. And then they blame the activity, or the activity gets labeled as bad or dangerous. Whereas really it was just a case of they took a body that wasn't accustomed to the demands of what they were trying to do, and they ramped it up too quickly. So it would be the exact same as, someone who decides they want to race a 10-kilometer run. They haven't run in, a couple of years, and on day one they run 10 kilometers. And then for, a week, their Achilles and calves are killing them.
Bits. Yeah.
And then they decide, like, road running is bad for you. I'm never road running again. And that can be for sure the same with going kind of headfirst into just trying to swing as fast as you possibly can. If you ramp up the intensity, like they're the two main, I guess, training sort of metrics that you need to be thinking about is intensity, so how hard you're trying, and volume, how much you're doing. And if you raise both of them too quickly, that's when we tend to get into trouble, because your body doesn't have a chance to adapt. So we want to think about, with any type of new fitness activity or training activity, like drip feeding it. So do a little bit, see how you adapt. Okay, we're good. Do a little bit, see how you adapt. And thinking it almost of like a staircase, very gradual progression, rather than a rocket launcher going straight to the sky, which happens because people get a burst of enthusiasm, and
your enthusiasm gets ahead of your comprehension of what you have to do, right? That it is a journey that you're on to get there.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one, like just little and often. And then the other thing, like, that's important, I would say to people is, like, and this is something I've gotten better at as I've done it for longer as well, for sure, is like, and we touched on it actually at the start of the episode, even though more club head speed is, say, the goal of what we're talking about here, it doesn't necessarily come from trying harder. It doesn't necessarily come from just swinging as hard as you can.
Yeah.
Like, you can often gain huge amounts of club head speed by not even trying as hard, but moving better. And kind of the benefit of that is, in general, that also tends to help how well we can hit the golf ball. So it's a kind of double whammy of, okay, the golf ball is going further with way higher club head speed, but it's also just a more like neutral delivery. It's not going as far offline, and I'm hitting it more solid. So like that is something that is part of it. Sure, that there is times when you need to get used to kind of opening up and going at it a bit harder, but like the vast majority of people, amateur golfers, have like 5 to 7 miles an hour of club head speed, just waiting with a tweak to their mechanics, with zero change to their physical capabilities, zero change to how hard they try and hit it. Just being shown, this is your current technique. This is where we could move towards to get more speed. And then sure, if they want more, then they'll need to look at going down the physical training route to get their muscles stronger and their joints more mobile. They might need to look at getting more comfortable swinging at a higher effort level, which is one of the reasons why people struggle with speed too. They just constrain themselves because they're worried about where it's going. But the biggest one, like, is, in general, amateur golfers move in a way where they just don't have a chance to express anywhere close to the potential they currently have. And what's nice about that is that as you're gaining club head speed, you'll probably start hitting it a lot better in general too.
Definitely. I mean, from a personal point of view, I can't say I've added a huge amount of club head speed, but we're getting there. But I've definitely found that it's really interesting with driving in particular, where I guess I had not necessarily a huge amount of apprehension, but I wasn't going at it as hard as I could or as fast as I could for a long time. And then I started doing it. Literally very simple. Aim left, hit it as hard as I can, or what I perceived as hard as I can.
Yeah.
And honestly, my dispersion is so much tighter. I'm hitting it a bit further. But I'm actually enjoying the game as well. I think that's the most important part. It's not like I'm standing there thinking, oh my God, I'm going to worry about where I'm hitting this driver now. I actually go at the driver and I'm quite excited about using it.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think anyone, who's played golf has been in situations where they've been nervous or fearful and they've tried to hold back in their swing. And, then we get guidey and steery. And oftentimes those shots are worse than when we, free up. Like, and I always find it amazing hitting like, say a layup on a par 5 with like a mid iron or something like that, where you have a massive fairway to aim at.
It's like the toughest shot in golf, isn't it?
So what's funny is, what I was actually going to say is, I often find, because I have zero worry about it going into a bad spot, it goes exactly where I want it to. Because because if I go 20 yards right or left with the 6 iron, it doesn't matter. And then on a par 3 with a 6 iron where there's a narrow target and you're trying to hone in, you hit it way offline because you're like, I need to hit this really straight. Like, it's funny, but yeah, bringing that back to driving, I think, like, if you talk to good players or particularly good drivers, they're not holding much in the tank. Like, they have a target and they're hitting it hard at the target. And I think if we relate that to other sports too, like if you've ever, played soccer or like any throwing or hitting sport, you generally tend to be more accurate when you're like putting a reasonable amount of effort into what you're doing.
Yeah,
like
even if you look at kicking a rugby ball, if you try to cozy a rugby ball over the posts, it is the worst attempt ever. You've got to be effectively smashing it every time. There's no point trying to cozy it. It's just not any good.
Yeah, exactly. You'll see even those players, like, if they're well within their range, if they're only 30 meters out and their range is 55 meters, they're probably kicking it with pretty much the same effort level, because that's where their most accuracy comes from. And they're certain, like, if those players get under pressure, they're certainly not thinking, okay, let's dial back the power here and make sure that I hit it straight. No chance, you know.
No.
Whereas we kind of tend to do that on the golf course a little bit.
Yeah, and I was going to say you famously worked with Stephen Yeager. I think he's one of the most famous examples of someone who was not necessarily great at driving, albeit he's on the PGA Tour and had a great career already. But I'd love you to talk a little bit about his story and how he developed his game from where he was and how it's helped him improve now.
Yeah, so like he's talked about this a bit himself on podcasts and stuff like that, so I don't really mind bringing it up. But like he was just struggling with driving in general. Like I remember when he called me, it was kind of 3 years ago now. He basically said like, Mike, I'm short and crooked, so I'm thinking I might as well start hitting it as far as I can because right now I'm too far away from the green and I'm not on the fairway. So he's like, if I'm going to be in the rough or in trouble, I might as well be down close to the green. And lo and behold, as he started working on hitting it further, exactly what you were saying, like he got less fearful about where the ball was going and was just committing to, this is my target and I'm going to launch it at this target with full commitment. I don't care where it goes. Obviously, he did care where it went. But with that focus, he actually got better and better at driving. Like he'd gotten to a point where like he wasn't teeing his driver up a lot of the time. He was hitting drivers off the deck because he was, just trying to keep it in play. And like in that 3 years, like his average ball speed on the PGA Tour has gone from 169 to 180. So like
that's huge.
It's been a big increase. Like, and he's hitting it. I haven't checked his on like fairways. Hit is a tough one as well because it doesn't tell you about where the offline ones are going. But he's as accurate, if not more accurate, and he's about 25 yards longer. So it's been huge for him. And part of that, to be perfectly honest, like is when we started, because he was, struggling and had some anxiety over the ball, he was holding back a lot of speed that he had. So like he got from 169 to 174, 175, like very quickly.
Right.
More a case of like, stop holding back and just commit to hitting it. And a lot of players get gains like that early, but he's essentially gained another 5. And it's actually ties in with what we were talking about. Like he got a lot of improvement from, and tour players are a little bit different to the amateur example we were talking about of just concentrate on moving better and improving your technique, because they kind of already are close to the technique that they're going to stick with, because they're already very good. It's not like the 95 shooter that has loads of room to enhance their technique before they decide this is the swing, that this is kind of where my finish point is. But he got to a point where he gained a lot of speed from just focusing on essentially doing driver speed sessions where he was hitting kind of like 25 to 30 balls at a target, but trying to get the speed up. And then he hit a bit of a plateau at the end of last season, and he jumped up again at the start of this season because he put a much bigger emphasis on his strength training. Right. I think, and he'd tell you that himself, like because he was getting such gains early on from just doing the speed training. I know for a lot of players that's enough. They don't need any more. I think potentially he didn't value this, even though he was doing it very diligently, probably didn't see like the importance of the strength training as much. But then he kind of hit a bit of a plateau. He had a really good season, which meant that he had about 4 months off, and he really, really pushed up his strength levels. Right. And now, if you think about it from a common sense standpoint, he's now doing those speed sessions with much stronger muscles. Like the speed is up, So,
and again, he's got less chance of injuring himself because he's warming up properly. He's got better physicality. He's just not in a position where he's going to harm himself because of the way he's doing it as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And then the other person that I heard saying this actually was Xander Schauffele recently, that he started lifting heavier at competition, and he started it last year, and I think that's been a real correlation for him, increasing his ball speed as well, where, you look at his golf swing, it doesn't look like he's going at it, but he's saying by lifting more, even during competition, he's just immediately gaining yards, which is incredible.
Yeah, I think a mistake that a lot of people make, or something they don't understand, is like they think that, training heavy in season or in competition weeks will be very fatiguing, or you'll be sore and stiff and, won't be able to play as well in the coming days. But like what's important to realize is that, and we actually touched on it earlier again, when we talked about intensity and volume as kind of the two main areas in training you want to look at, by far the most fatiguing thing in training is volume. So how much of something we do.
Right.
Intensity isn't as big a driver as fatigue at all. And what that means is that you can actually train very, very heavy in season or in tournament weeks, but just massively strip down the sets and reps that you're doing, and you have almost zero fatigue, especially if you're used to the training. So what that might look like for a tour player, like, is if they have a tournament on let's say starting on Thursday, obviously, if they do a couple of sets of squats, deadlifts, bench presses, and heavy rows, but they do something like a decent warm up, and then do something like 2 very hard sets of like 3 or 4 reps on those 4 exercises, like they're not going to have muscle damage or soreness or fatigue in the tournament. Whereas if they went lighter and did something like 3 sets of like 15 reps with the same level of kind of the same proximity to, let's say, failure at the end of the set, like if they made the end of the set of 15 with very light reps, the end of the set with very heavy weight at like 3 or 4 reps, there'd be much more fatigue, much more soreness with the light reps. Because it's anyone who's kind of done resistance training will be aware that as you get towards the end of a set, when the reps are higher, you start to feel kind of like essentially like the burn and the buildup of like waste product.
Right.
That's what leads to the muscle damage and fatigue, more so than the heavy load, where it's literally just your muscle force means that you can't lift it,
Yeah.
So, and that's very much the way that I would set up the training for the tour players I work with. Like the sets and reps are very low, and the weight is kept challenging, because that way you keep the strength and power levels high, but you're minimizing fatigue.
Fantastic. And then, Mike, we haven't really talked about your own golf. I mean, you're a decent player yourself, so how's your golf coming along? I know you're chasing a bit of speed and a few other things, so how's that going for you?
It's good. So about the same time that I went full time with the app, I kind of started putting a decent bit of time into like trying to get better at golf, basically like practice and play. So I got from 5 to like +1 handicap in a little over a year.
Congratulations, that's awesome.
So yeah, thank you. That was that was like 2020, 2021. I'm currently, I think, 0.8. So I've kind of hovered around scratch or slightly better than it for the last couple of years. A little like some of that, I'm sure there's plenty of talk about it where you are, like the handicap system has completely changed. So it's not quite the same as it was before. And, it's all casual rounds, in my local course kind of thing.
I think if you get on it, there's a lot of disparity. It's either people are too low or too high. There's nobody really seems to be playing at the right handicap all the time.
Well, I think it's just very volatile.
Yeah.
Like if you get on a good stretch, you can be like, Jesus, this is crazy. Like there's no way this is my handicap. But if you just happen to get on a stretch of 3 or 4, really good rounds for whatever reason, But then on the flip side, if you start to struggle at all, like it goes back up. Like I got to +2.6 in last summer, and then I was 1.0 this year. Whereas before, I think it would have been hard to see that much change.
Yeah, it would take you almost 3 seasons to go from +2.6 to that before, wouldn't it?
Exactly, and you just wouldn't get to +2.6 because more of your scores would be included, and you wouldn't be only using the best 8. But long story short, like put a good bit of time into kind of golf practice and play, and I've been enjoying it. And yeah, I've sort of some aspirations to try and give maybe some competitive amateur golf, a bit of a run here. I'd like to, as kind of like bigger goals. I'm a bit away from it now for definite, but there's a couple of kind of tournaments I'd like to try and qualify for on the amateur scene here. That would be, sort of written up on the board reasons why you're getting up and going to the range or whatever. But I just like it too. Like, it's fun. And one thing I will say for definite, like, is I've enjoyed golf way more when I started playing better. Like, I was struggling quite a bit, and like, not that score, not even that score is super important, but like, if you're all over the golf course, if you can't keep it in play, if you're, I had an awful couple of years, like short game wise, kind of chipping yips and stuff like that. And the big thing that I find now is that golf takes way less energy. Like,
yeah,
before I could be on the 13th hole and I'd be exhausted and I'd be like, oh, like, can this end?
And you're a fit guy as well. I mean, that's somebody
Yeah,
who's super fit saying that.
That's just mental, exhaustion from like, I'm just not having a good time here, But if you feel like, you're in reasonable control of where you're hitting it and you're kind of playing holes as they're supposed to be played to a certain extent, and I found that much more enjoyable. And if you can kind of see the work that you're putting in come out on the course, it's nice too,
Fantastic. So, Mike, wrapping up here, what's next for Fit for Golf? What have you got on the horizon?
Yeah, so kind of one thing we didn't mention was last year we released a brand new app that we built from scratch to take over from the platform we'd been using for the years before that.
Okay.
And kind of with app development is tough. Like, you always feel like you're kind of chasing where you want to get to.
Yeah.
But that app has been out almost a year now, and we've gotten to a pretty good point with it. The main things are kind of continually improving the user interface and features on that. And to be honest, other than that, there's no big plans for many changes. Like, I would like to try and help as many people as possible with their kind of golf, well, I guess with their fitness for golf and life, both through the app and through the free material I do online. And yeah, hopefully kind of continue to support the tour players that put some trust in me and let them see some progress. Hopefully that's kind of pretty much it. And keep the golf scores going in the right direction rather than the wrong direction, which was the case at the start of this year for sure.
Brilliant. So, Mike, just closing off here, if people want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
So I'm on Twitter and Instagram. The handle is fit_for, FOR_golf. And then my website is fitforgolf.app. And on the website, there's a contact form that will come through to me as an email if anyone wants to write a message.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for coming on, Mike. It's been really brilliant to hear from you. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Ross.
I hope you took as much from that conversation with Mike as I did, whether it's rethinking how you train, understanding the real impact fitness can have on your game, or just feeling inspired to put a little more work into the parts of golf that happen off the course. Big thanks again to Mike for coming on and sharing his knowledge and experience with us. Honestly, it's even inspired me to start using a slalom ball in my own golf improvement journey, so if you need a little extra motivation, there you go. If you enjoyed the episode, please make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss any of the upcoming shows. I've got plenty more great guests lined up. And if you enjoyed this episode or any of the others, leaving a quick rating or review really helps me grow the podcast and reach more people who love hearing the journeys as much as we do. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next time on Link by Golf.